Welcome back to the VET S.O.S podcast. Remember, you do not have to drown in the sea of transition. Grab that VET S.O.S lifeline. And today, sitting on the stoop, we are going to get the scoop with one of the last 600 meters. This is what we're going to talk about today. Michael Pack, he is the producer, director of the last 600 meters, which tells the story of the 2004 battles of Najaf and Fallujah, the two biggest battles of the Iraq War, through the words and deeds of those who fought there. PBS will broadcast this event on November 10th, the day before Veterans Day. He is the president of Manifold Productions, an independent film and television corporation, which he founded in 1977. Mr. Pack has written, directed, and produced numerous award-winning national broadcast documentaries, as well as corporate and educational films. Mr. Pack attended college at Yale University, California, Berkeley, and has studied film at New York University. With his business partner, Gina, have 3 sons and resides in Chevy Chase, Maryland. Once again, Mr. Pack, thank you so much for coming on to the VET S.O.S podcast and talking about the last 600 meters.
It's great to be on with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. So can you give us a background? So we had a little conversation. We have a little technical difficulties, but we figured it out. So tell me about Michael Pack and his journey of how we got here and to talk about the last 600 meters.
Sure. So I've been producing documentaries for many decades. I've done over 15 that have all been nationally broadcast on PBS. The last big one was about Clarence Thomas, called Created Equal. Clarence Thomas in his own words, still streaming on Amazon Prime. I recommend it. But this one is, as you said already in the intro, tells the story of the biggest battles that America has fought since Vietnam, Fallujah and Najaf, first battle of Fallujah, Najaf, and the second battle of Fallujah, 2004 in Iraq. And we really want to tell the story of what happened in these battles, not the politics, whether the war was right or wrong, or why did we go in there, but what it was like on the ground. And we speak to the people from corporals and sergeants up to the one-star generals that were in the field managing the battle. And we tell them like their battle stories, as if it were Gettysburg or Iwo Jima or any other famous battle. And I think these are great stories. I mean, this is a veterans podcast, and I feel strongly that the right way to honor veterans is to tell the story of what they did. It's good to talk about things like PTSD and the difficulties of coming home, but I think people want to be remembered by their heroic actions and what they did for the country first and foremost. And that's what we're trying to do in this film. And I'm really pleased that PBS is going to nationally broadcast it the day before Veterans Day, Veterans Day Eve, 10 p.m. all around the country. So just go to your local PBS station. And if you miss it, it'll be streaming on Amazon and many other platforms thereafter. And it'll be on the PBS app for that matter. So I think it's important to honor these veterans. I am pleased it's on at that great time slot. That is also the Marine Corps birthday. And these battles were primarily Marine battles, Army too. We have one Air Force Special Forces person in there as well, but they're primarily Marine battles.
And when you was doing the documentary, what was one of the, you say you spoke to Sergeant NCO and getting it from the ground aspect. And, as we talked about before, is, as being a combat veteran myself, is different when you're actually living and you're going through the action to get down and speak to the ones that's on the front lines so they could share their story, share their journey instead of looking at it from the top down, but actually looking at that ground level.
Well, that's right. I think that is really important to do. So I myself have never been to Iraq, but we used still photography and video shot by people who were there, combat correspondents and photojournalists. And then we talked to the soldiers and Marines that were involved in that footage. We conducted these interviews in 2006, 2 years after the battle. So their memories were fresh. Those that were young in the battle were still young when we interviewed them. And we got their deeply felt views. And you were quite right. We talked about this a little before the film. people really need to appreciate and understand what it's like to be in these battles, and what we're asking these young men and women to do. And whether you agree or disagree with the Iraq War, that does not matter. These young men and women are there. We ask them to they volunteer to serve. They're defending the country. They're doing what we ask them to do, and they're putting their life on the line. And we tell some horrible stories. The second Battle of Fallujah culminates in a firefight called Hell House, where Marines got pinned. They were clearing Fallujah house by house, breaking down doors, trying to arrest insurgents and avoid killing or harming civilians, a challenge anyway. And a bunch of Marines got pinned in the last house, pinned by crossfire, and other Marines had to go in there and rescue them. These young Marines had to cross the kill zone not one or two, but 4 times. In order to get into the house, some of them had to take their Kevlar off, so they're going into this death trap with no armor. I mean, you can see what it's like. I feel that the description of it really pales. You can see even in the trailer, I think, that the footage and the words of these mostly men actually are what really count. I don't really feel I can do it justice in an interview.
Yeah, and I can't wait for the documentary to actually air, because in the preview, I've got to see, one of the soldiers. He said, "I don't make the policy; I just execute, what I'm been told by my orders. Right, the last 600 meters. Right, that's from thing to people don't realize, as a soldier, you get the orders down, regardless. We have a mission we have to do, and like you said, Michael, is 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 25, just coming from part of America, they just getting trained, and next thing you know, we're downrange overseas in a different country, just trying to learn the different maneuvers. And when I was downrange, all I wanted to do, Michael, was to make it back home.
Yeah, indeed.
Right? Every man, I was like, man, I know I have to do this mission is to make it back home.
Exactly. I think a lot of them felt that way. I mean, it's a lot to ask of these young men. I mean, we also talked to sort of majors and colonels, but we had a lot of non-commissioned officers and as well. And yes, I mean, we showed this film. I took the film around and we showed it at a bunch of military bases, and I showed it at Camp Pendleton. No, I mean, I showed it here rather at Quantico to Force Recon Marines. Those are the sort of Marine Special Forces. And these were people who were involved in World War II. So they were island hopping. They were going into places like Iwo Jima and Bataan and all the islands in the Pacific ahead of the Marine forces. And they are courageous men. They're the best of the best. And they said they could not do what these young Marines were doing. As they were saying, we get on the island, and if we saw anyone that looked Japanese, we'd kill them. And if they saw anyone who looked American, they would try to kill us. And that was that. That was the rules of engagement. It was simple. I mean, they were risking their lives. Their buddies died. They didn't have to think about who to shoot. These guys are going into places like Fallujah and Najaf, and who's a friend and who's an enemy, and who do you want to help get water and food to their family, and who is going to kill you or is hiding an IED or whatever. And they're asked to make these decisions at a very young age. And then in the very kinetic battles that we focus on, Fallujah and Najaf, I mean, many, many of them see their buddies wounded and die next to them. And as you said to me, I think slightly before the interview, you really never forget that. It's with you forever. We are really happy. It took us many years to get this film broadcast by PBS, and we have a lot of the veterans who we've reached out to who are going to want to watch it, and their families watch it. And I really hope it helps. I think it's very important, as you were also saying earlier, that other people in the country, people like me that didn't fight, understand what it's like. I mean, we're going to have battles like this again. Right now, this kind of urban warfare is going on in Ukraine and Gaza. America will be pulled into this kind of war again. I hope not, but it's almost certain. And let's understand what we're asking of the men and women who volunteer to defend us. And I think the way to understand it is to look at what happened in these battles. And Fallujah and Najaf are the perfect battles to look at, since they are the biggest battles really since Hue City in Vietnam. So why don't we know those? Why don't we know what happened there? I mean, the name Fallujah rings a bell with some people, but they can't tell you the story of what happened there. And Najaf barely rings a bell. But these are the biggest battles. Let's at least try to understand them, and that's what our film attempts to do.
Well, and how long did it take you to? You say there's a lot of still photos and interviews. How long did it take you to reach out to the units that were out there, actually people that was on the ground to share their, for what they seen through their eyes, and to share that story so the documentary could be established and built?
It took me a couple years to put the film together. And we put most of it together in around 2008. It was principally funded by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and it was always intended for PBS. At first, PBS rejected it as too pro-military, but now the current president of PBS, Paula Kerger, I think had the courage and insight to bring it back and put it on the air now. So we slightly updated it, and it'll be on the air now. And maybe it's right that now is a time that people can look back on these wars. I mean, in 2008, 2009, 2010, everyone viewed it through a political lens: for the war, against the war, what you thought of President Bush, what you didn't think about President Bush. And now people can see what those wars are like without that filter. And I think that is a perfect time. And it's going to be on November 10th is also the 250th anniversary of the Marine Corps. So I'm honored to be the PBS film that represents the Marine Corps at that moment. So I think it's an important time, a good time for it to be on. It took a long time to put it together. And I have to say, I mean, one of the heroes of the film is General Mattis, who was the hero of the first Battle of Fallujah, and he really helped make the film come together. And I really appreciate it. You know, the trailer that you're going to show has a little clip of his generous comments about it. But you know, we did end up. It was a big fight, but we ended up getting the cooperation of the military. Otherwise, couldn't have happened.
Right. And I just want to, like I said before we started recording, to thank you for actually taking time out to go and do the research and reach out to the individuals to hear their side of the story. Cause like you said, it was in some odds, it was so long ago. But for me, when I seen the trailer, it automatically brung me back to that environment I
Mm.
was in downrange. So I'm sure other veterans who experienced that type of environment, once they see it, it'll bring some stuff that was been, for me. I suppressed it, right? I push it down and kind of put it lock way in the key, but I haven't really addressed it. So hopefully this film can help other veterans, to go seek help that they've been dealing with internally, with that war inside.
I hope so too. I mean, I think for veterans, it is a difficult film to watch. We've had a lot of the veterans say they hope their family watches it. That's sort of the most common response. I mean, I think they want their family, their loved ones, to understand what they did more than anything. So I hope it'll have that effect as well. But we really intended it for the average American who maybe doesn't know anybody in the military, to try to understand what we're asking of our military to do. So I hope it accomplishes all those objectives. We'll see. It's important to tell these stories, and we are lucky to have been able to capture it at a time when it could still be captured.
Yes, no, that's perfect. And I have a lot of people who haven't served that I'm communicate with and friends with, and they ask me, hey, what is like, what was it like downrange? And something that I didn't want to like bring up, like relive it, but showing it through a documentary. And like you said, they could understand, like, oh, okay, so was this what you experienced? Okay, so this is why you're secluded, or this is why when you walk into and by you looking around, or you don't
Mm,
know who's friendly, who's not, is somebody hands in their pocket, this is the reason why you're in that ready state, I call it.
mm.
So I just want to definitely say thank you for putting this documentary and having PBS air it to show. the internal battles and struggles that, we went through, especially as young adults, and
Indeed.
even the people that was in command too, commanding, America's children, and just making sure that, you know, people make it back. But the reality, some didn't make it back. And how do you continue to showcase that, like, this is what they had to do from the leadership side, from the infantry side, from the person that's on the ground to the person that's making the decisions, and where did it affect in between?
Indeed. I mean, everyone had very tough dilemmas, and the people in command had a hard time too. I mean, one of the things that was a feature of the Iraq War and Afghanistan as well was sort of conflicting views from Washington and changes of opinion. So the first Battle of Fallujah, which is how the film starts, was initiated when 4 Blackwater contractors were killed, burned, dragged through the streets of Fallujah, and then hung from a bridge in a very striking image that a lot of people remember that were watching it in 2004. And so, because of that, and actually against military advice, um, it was decided that insurgents needed to be cleared out of Fallujah. So they initiated the battle, and it was a very tough kinetic fight. And the images were so horrific. And Al Jazeera we showed a scene where Marine Corps were clearing Fallujah out, and one of the things they had to do was take over this hospital. And while they were clearing the hospital, you could see on the hospital TV that Al Jazeera was already had images of them in the hospital and was putting their spin on it. So because of all that negative publicity, it was determined to stop the Marine Corps advance. So they have to go in, and then they have to stop. And then they're told to pull out, and Fallujah becomes an insurgent stronghold. And for months, so the U.S. doesn't go in, and it becomes an arms depot, and atrocities go on there, including a beheading. And then the Marine Corps is in again to clear it out. But this time, to avoid the atrocities and the negative publicity, they announce when they're going in, so all the civilians could clear out, and a massive amount of civilians left. But so did the leadership of Al Qaeda. So the Al Qaeda leadership went on to neighboring Ramadi. So they finally cleared Fallujah, but the people left behind were some civilians, and then soldiers that knew they were going to die and simply wanted to kill as many Marines before they died, and were sort of hopped up on drugs. And so it was a particularly vicious battle, and they had to clear it house to house, and it was never clear where the insurgents were and where the families were. And it's a tough and difficult story, and there's soldiers and Marines, and we have an Air Force Special Forces young woman in there. They have to deal with this conflicting changes and changes in the rules of engagement, and it's a challenge on top of all the other difficulties and horrors of war. And I don't think this film attempts to minimize them. I mean, we see how horrible war is. You see people with their body parts blown off, and you see at one point a dog wandering through the streets of Fallujah holding a dead soldier's body part in its mouth. I mean, horrible things. And you talked about the smell. We have one, tank officer talking about what the smell like is in Fallujah, and he can never forget it. The smell of burning bodies and decaying corpses. I mean, horrible, horrible stuff. So we don't go light on that, but that doesn't take away. In fact, I think it increases the heroism and courage of the people who fought there.
And definitely we're, 20 years after, coming up on 21 years. And like I shared with you before we started recording, it's like, I could still taste it. I could still smell the burning, you
Mm,
know, tires. I could still hear
mm,
the tank tracks. I could still hear, the Humvee engines. I could still hear it just,
mm,
like, all of that, it comes in.
mm.
That was, over 20 years ago, for that battle. Like I said, I've been deployed to multiple locations as well, but just to see in the trailer and to see that picture, like, that's something that I have in here as well that's locked away.
Yeah, I think everybody in the film shares that feeling. Absolutely everybody, no matter their rank and no matter which of these battles they were in. I mean, so that's right. Even the toughest Marine feels that strongly.
And you shared that you wanted to, this film is to highlight these two conflicts to the people who haven't served so they could get an understanding or get to like, hey,
Mm,
this is what, happened on range. Because it was, a different story being told over, coming back, like, or it wasn't being shared as much, right, as the film is going to show, right? A lot of things was kind of watered down to like, hey, it's nothing thing, but this film shows the internal. This film shows, from the ground standpoint. This film shows normal, normal day to day. Like I said, young individuals in the early teens, late teens, early 20s. Early, just downrange.
that's right. Absolutely. I mean, you could see it having a transformative effect on them. I mean, we another group that we focused on was a sort of squad that was involved in that second Battle of Fallujah, and you can see you see footage where one of them is sort of shot in the head and wounded and carried off the battlefield, and you have to watch the other ones going on. Um, so yeah, that's right. It's very much, and they're all. You're right. They're in their late teens, early 20s. It's traumatic for them, and they have to show the courage and fortitude to persist anyway. But the long term impacts, as you were saying, are significant.
Uh, so one of the things that you want to take away from the list, because I know that we're gonna air this and then it's gonna show on November 10th. Um, for them to tune in just to kind of share it with others, so this could get max exposure.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be on PBS nationally, November 10th at 10 p.m. But if you miss that, it'll be on the PBS app right away, and it'll be streaming shortly thereafter. I mean, PBS is distributing it as well. It'll be on their Amazon channel and many other places. So as long as you can remember the name The Last 600 Meters, I think you'll be able to find it. Some people like to say, well, it's at the last 600 yards, but it isn't the last 600 yards because the military is the only institution in America that is on the metric system. So it's the last 600 meters. And as you were saying earlier, a sniper gives it that title in the film. He says, I don't make foreign policy. I deliver the last 600 meters of it. In his case, he means the 600 meters he can see through his sniper scope. That's what he delivers. Whatever they tell him, it's his job to do the final thing, sometimes called the tip of the spear. But it's that last 600 meters. What is that battle like? And I am forever changed having made that film. I mean, I have changed my view of war. I was deeply impressed by the young people I met making it. They're not
And
so young now, 17 years later. I mean, now they're middle-aged men, with families. Some are divorced, some have multiple families. I mean, they've had complicated lives. Um, but I memorialized what it was like when they were young and in this battle, and I'm happy to have done it.
I once again I want to thank you so much, on behalf of all veterans. I want to
Mm,
thank you on veterans' families, of friends, of neighbors, of like I said, just to, before we started recording, just to share, because a lot of times we deal with a lot of internal battles and struggles, right, that we don't want to open up
mm.
about, right? It is the stuff that we want to keep inside because we don't want to relive, what we made it through, or what others not here. So I just want to thank you on behalf of them, as being a veteran, and in that standpoint as well.
But I'm very appreciative of these veterans for being willing to be interviewed and tell me their stories. It was not easy for a lot of them, and it took some time to get a lot of them to agree. I mean, I remember going to one of their homes, and we had dinner together, and he wouldn't discuss anything. Zero. It was his wife, him, and myself. And when his wife left, and it got later, and he had a few beers, then he talked.
Yeah,
But
it
it
opened
wasn't
up a
with,
little
but
bit, right?
yes, I went up a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, but he wouldn't do it with his wife there, which is So it takes something. I mean, I know that I was asking these people to talk about something that's difficult, so I am always appreciative of that, and it was really an honor to tell their stories. The honor goes that way. I'm the one that is honored.
Thank you, Michael. And how can they get a hold of you, or how can they reach out to your company, or see any other upcoming films that you have slated to come out, or even look at some other films that you already completed in the past?
Well, we have two companies, Manifold Productions, which is they can go to manifoldproductions.com, where our previous films are. We have one other military film about Admiral Rickover, who helped create the nuclear navy and nuclear power, and he's an amazing figure of a different sort. Our newer productions are under Palladium Pictures, Palladium Pictures.com, and we have some long form ones coming out. We've been doing a bunch of short films with the Wall Street Journal that are free not behind their paywall at wsj.com/opinion docs. They could go to my X account, which is Michael Pack _, but I think they're probably better off on the websites. And then on the Palladium website, we also offer an incubator program for young or not so young filmmakers to sort of hone their craft. So they can apply, and we give people funding to do a short film on any subject, including a veteran subject, if they're filmmakers already and have done one or two things. And we give them a grant, we oversee it, we mentor them, and we help distribute it. And that's open too. So if they went to palladiumpictures.com/incubator, they could apply. So that's a lot of stuff. I mean, we've done 15 films. I think they're all great. And we have a bunch of short films that are out on the Palladium website too.
I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you. And remember, you do not have to drown in the sea of transition. Grab that VET S.O.S lifeline. Reach out to Michael Pack and his team if you are looking for any film. Even if you want to be a small film producer, like I say, he has opportunities for you to excel. And this is all about helping veterans, helping veterans. It's definitely veterans sharing stories. Once again, thank you, Michael. Until next time, everybody.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you.